It's quite hard to sort of identify with, people talk about successful entrepreneurs or successful innovators and stuff, but it depends what you measure success by. For me, I'm driven by two things in life, probably in a slightly twisted way: anger and purpose. Anger happens when I look at an industry in financial services, in mine in particular, which is the asset and wealth management industry, with $240 trillion of assets sitting on legacy systems and monolithic databases that were actually designed and implemented when even I was at university, although I didn't finish university. And the barrier to innovation has always been with the large organizations around our business. Yet we seem to want to call ourselves innovators, whether we're running banks or large organizations, and we do things. My career has been one probably slightly contrarian to most people. I went to high school in New Zealand. When I was at high school, my life was one of intense rugby, of course, but also very strong discipline. We were caned, we were strapped. But I did notice one thing when I was at high school, and there were these two computers in a corner, and they were Radio Shack TRS-80 computers. For those of you who are probably as old as me, you may remember them. They were 8-bit computers, completely useless in terms of anything really. But they were the forerunner, or one of the forerunners of the computing age, the personal computing world, in the 1970s and 80s. And for me, it triggered something, triggered a visceral feeling of there's something going on here that I want to understand. So I started to bribe teachers so I could use these computers. I went to university, and actually I wasn't really interested in university. I was more interested in using the university to fund an Apple Macintosh, which we were able to do because we got a loan, which I started writing code on that, and eventually spent a decade in banking and financial services in New Zealand, which was almost akin to nothing, before I came to the UK in '98 and set myself towards the asset and wealth management industry. When I came into the UK, there was no such thing as FinTech. Asset managers were giants. They were predominantly owned by life companies and things, but they were titans in the industry. And all technology was really built in-house at that point. Vast amounts of people. There were mainframe systems, of course, but the PC, I think, that was sort of rolling across at that point was around 32 bits. So that's an order of magnitude from this today. And I found in that industry a lot of opportunity because the industry was struggling with paper and people and process. I was a maverick that was enabled to kind of talk about new things. E-commerce was my first title. Not that I knew what that was, not that anyone else did, but it seemed pretty good at the time. And that enabled me to kind of think up the crazy ideas. And one of those was something called Co-Funds, which is the largest mutual fund supermarket in the UK. But I was an intrapreneur rather than an entrepreneur, so created the business and it moved on, but I'd never kind of went inside it. The anger came when I was talking to an incumbent organization that was a large processing network, order routing network, we call it in the fund industry, processing fund transactions. And they developed an electronic messaging system. They were charging £6.50 for a fund transaction. And that was quite an astounding cost. I had asked them, gone out on my own business and asked them whether I could help them by building a great user experience over their slightly cumbersome system. And the answer was no. So I decided that I'd build an entirely new system, and one where we tried to connect the industry both in transactions and messaging. And that meant that the way our industry worked back then was, other than phone and fax and paper, was electronic message. I remember the incumbent CEO coming into my small little business, which was a borrowed office, and telling me he wanted to understand who Calastone was, because he wanted to work out whether he needed to crush us or not. And that is a very typical thing that tends to happen, probably not so vociferously in industries, but with large corporates and organizations. So my attitude is they quite often stifle innovation, they don't create it. Luckily, the anger took over, so I found more purpose, and Calastone today is the largest order routing fund transaction network in the world, outside of the DTCC in the US, which Carlyle bought for $350 million a couple of years ago. So it did okay. Really, what I realized on this way was that innovation struggles to emerge in corporate organizations. And you can do the IBM thing, which they did, which was their when they decided IBM was the largest organization in the world outside of, actually, bar none, IBM decided that they were going to go into the PC market. And even though they were the giant and titan of computing, they set aside a small group of people and sent them out to Florida, 25 I think it was, to develop the PC. And that they sold 500,000 units as they developed this computer over 6 months. So their concept of being able to innovate, incubate inside a large corporate organization was well done. Made a slight mistake on getting the pricing with Microsoft, but that's a different story, which opened Microsoft to the clone world of computing. But the other side of it is, why do corporate organizations struggle with innovation? And for me, one of the things that probably is the differentiator in my mind, which is not that I'm smarter or less smart or anything than anyone else, is I have a creative mind. So I look at a problem, and it's not academic, and so I kind of take exception to, we need lots more computer engineers and so forth, because we know with artificial intelligence that's actually a fallacy, right? My business today has artificial intelligence that writes code. I can write code in Go, Java, React. I can write it over microservices. I can write it over anything. I don't need engineers anymore at that level, other than senior engineers at the moment, to guide and prompt the artificial intelligence. So a computer science degree is very questionable in the world we're going to. It may be a good foundation to be able to understand what's going to happen. But I think, for me, creativity is the most important thing in innovation. And that is almost a dichotomy with financial services, right, and FinTech organizations, because the nature of what banks and things do is not to be creative. In my career, when I've seen organizations, FinTechs, which are old FinTechs rather than new FinTechs, as they get to a size and scale and have lots of thousands of people or hundreds of people and large revenues, they don't innovate. Their businesses don't. Research and development in financial services is a fictional statement quite often. It's a way people manipulate financial reporting to show that you're actually doing stuff, when in fact you're getting clients to fund it or do other things. You're not innovating through that. And a lot of these organizations don't do that. What they tend to do is they resort to two kind of key things. Is if they've got big size and scale and their monopolistic behavior, sometimes monopolies, they will acquire. So they try and buy all the FinTech businesses around, the little ones, or They watch them fall and fail. And the other way they do is they litigate against them, which is quite often happens, and that's appalling. But they stifle that innovation. They're not interested in changing the status quo. Our industry likes the status quo, and that's a really disappointing thing, but actually it's a driver for a lot of the economy, because if you're driving revenues and profitability, why bring in innovation where you can disrupt the business? I joined one of the largest organizations to head up an innovation unit in 2012, and the CEO, as I joined, said, innovation in our business is an oxymoron. This is one of the largest fintechs in asset and wealth management. And so I realized the only way to create innovation in an organization like that is to go outside in, to build a small team, to build it out rather than inside out, to change the behavior of that organization, because that organization, corporately, people, everything, was just a juggernaut. And it wasn't interested in change. It just wanted to maintain its position so it could drive its revenues and profitability. Just keep an eye on the time. So I left that organization because we built a great capability. We actually delivered the first fund transaction in the world down a blockchain in 2016, which had never been done before, which was pretty astounding and for end-to-end. And we started to talk about new market infrastructures, blockchain infrastructures. I went to that organization's board 4 times to try and get them. These are people that have been with great degrees, probably notable, reputable individuals, 4 times to try and explain to them what this was, this technology. And in the end, I got quite frustrated. I used, as New Zealanders do, quite a strong expletive. And I just said, 3 people, 2 months have screwed your business. And the reason is they've removed all the friction from that loop. And the friction is where people make money. In the fund industry, to settle, if you go and buy a ISA or a product from AJ Bell or Hargreaves Lansdowne through your mobile app, well, first of all, it's good that you can get it on a mobile app. I mean, that's sort of way behind banking. And banking's only kind of fortunate, really, in a driver because of the neobanks, because of the Ann Bodens and the FinTech starters. Ann Boden and Starling was a FinTech, it wasn't a bank. It started as a FinTech. That was their Monzo, the same thing. And that's propelled the high street banks, as they were called, the legacy banks, to actually do something. Otherwise, they would have sat there and done nothing, right? They're not interested in innovating, much as they say they are. In New Zealand, the banks are the most profitable banks in the world because they're Australian banks and they own New Zealand, but they're able to drive monopolistic behaviour on price. So they're not interested in competition. But the UK did something amazing with open banking and opening that marketplace. And so now we have all of this wonderful colour and flavour of young businesses coming. But it's enormously difficult in the fintech or financial services market because of regulation. The FCA is 3 steps behind any of that, where technology is right now. As much as they say they're not, they are. It's a matter of catching up, and it's almost impossible to because of the speed of technology. But moving back to the business, I moved to another organisation which was an even more advanced fintech, and it was a wealth management software provider, great dynamic business. You look at the website, it's astounding. Huge market capitalization now, over 20 billion, and thousands of employees and stuff. And the CEO again there, who was probably one of the most intelligent individuals I've come across, said, come and blockchain the world. I don't mind if you disrupt my business. I don't mind if you innovate through all of that. And so I spent 2 years doing that with a team. And as we were ready to go live, he said, yeah, no. And it wasn't his fault, it was my naivety. The yeah, no was because in the end, I would have disrupted his business. I would have taken all of the costs where he makes his revenues and profits out. And I realized it's the most crazy thing to have in my mind, to have been so naive to have not understood that as an entrepreneur. So I went out and started my own business. And I said, we're going to build this industry from the ground up again. We start moving that legacy asset, that 240 trillion, onto modern technology, so it's a platform for the future. Thank you.